Have you ever been so successful that your own family started treating you like a stranger? I'm talking about the kind of success that should make your loved ones proud, but instead makes them uncomfortable. The kind that earns you respect in boardrooms across the country, but somehow loses you your seat at your own family's dinner table. My name is Jessica Chen. No relation to the story I'm about to tell you, though that coincidence will make more sense in a moment. I'm 34 years old, and I've spent the last decade building something most people only dream of. I started as an intern at a consulting firm in Denver, worked my way up through sheer determination and countless 18-hour days, and now I run my own strategic consulting company that works with Fortune 500 corporations across the Midwest. I have clients who fly me first class to New York just to get my opinion on market expansions. I've helped save 3 companies from bankruptcy and launched 2 others into billion-dollar valuations. My LinkedIn has more endorsements than I can count, and my calendar is booked 6 months out. By every external measure, I've made it. But none of that mattered last Tuesday, when I opened my phone to find a family group chat that didn't include my name. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The notification popped up while I was reviewing quarterly projections in my downtown Denver office. You know that sinking feeling when you see a group message and instinctively know you're not supposed to be seeing it? That's exactly what happened when my phone lit up with a text thread titled, "Megan's Big Day Planning Committee." I stared at the screen, reading names I recognized intimately. Mom, Dad, my younger brother Tyler, my cousin Ashley, even my great-aunt Susan, who barely knows how to send individual texts, let alone navigate group chats. But my name wasn't there. I wasn't even accidentally included and then removed. There was no evidence I'd ever been considered for inclusion at all. The messages were flowing fast, filled with excitement and logistical details. Megan, my sister, was apparently getting engaged, and everyone was coordinating the surprise celebration. Everyone except me. I scrolled through the conversation, watching my family plan an event that I was clearly never meant to know about, much less attend. Mom had written, "I think Saturday afternoon would be perfect. We can use the back garden and I'll handle the catering." Dad responded with, "Should we invite the whole extended family?" Tyler chimed in with, "Obviously, this is huge for Meg." Aunt Susan, typing with her characteristic hunt and peck enthusiasm, added, "Can't wait to meet this young man she's been raving about." I kept reading, expecting to see my name mentioned eventually. Maybe someone would ask if I was available. Maybe someone would wonder if I knew about the engagement. But as I scrolled through 47 messages of planning details, my name never appeared. Not once. I wasn't even an afterthought. The engagement was apparently happening this weekend, and they were throwing a celebration party immediately afterward. Megan was marrying someone named Marcus Fitzgerald, whom I'd never heard of despite talking to my sister just 2 weeks ago. She'd mentioned dating someone new but hadn't given me any details, and now I understood why. She'd been planning a life-changing moment and hadn't thought to include me in any part of it. I set my phone down and stared out my floor-to-ceiling windows at the Rocky Mountains in the distance. Denver looked beautiful from the 42nd floor, all clean lines and possibility. Up here, I was Jessica Chen, strategic consultant, problem solver, the woman companies called when they needed someone who could see solutions others missed. Down there, in family group chats I wasn't included in, I was apparently nobody worth consulting at all. My assistant knocked on my office door, breaking my trance. "Jessica, your 3 o'clock is here early. Should I send them in or have them wait?" I looked at my phone again, half expecting to see a follow-up message that included me, some kind of explanation or correction. Nothing. Just the continued chatter of people planning a celebration I wouldn't be attending because I hadn't been invited to attend. "Give me 5 minutes, then send them in," I told my assistant, forcing my voice to sound normal. For the next hour, I sat in a meeting with executives from a pharmaceutical company, discussing their expansion into international markets. They hung on my every word, took detailed notes on my recommendations, and thanked me profusely for insights that would likely save them millions. These people, virtual strangers, valued my input more than my own family valued my presence. After they left, I found myself doing something I rarely allowed myself to do during work hours. I opened social media. Megan's Instagram told a story I hadn't been privileged to witness firsthand. Photos from the past 3 months showed her with a tall, dark-haired man in various settings around Colorado Springs, where she worked as a physical therapist. He appeared in hiking photos, restaurant pictures, even a few shots at family gatherings. I apparently hadn't been invited to either. Marcus Fitzgerald. According to his profile, he was 31, worked in renewable energy development, and had recently moved to Colorado from Portland. His company, Fitzgerald Green Solutions, specialized in solar panel installation for commercial properties. He looked genuinely happy in every photo with Megan, the kind of happiness that comes from someone who fits seamlessly into the life you're building. I scrolled through his professional profile out of curiosity and felt my stomach drop. Fitzgerald Green Solutions was listed as a subsidiary of Renewable Energy Dynamics, a company I knew intimately. I'd been consulting with their parent corporation, Summit Environmental Group, for the past 6 months, helping them streamline their acquisition process and improve operational efficiency across their subsidiary companies. Marcus Fitzgerald wasn't just my sister's fiancé. He was, in a roundabout way, connected to one of my biggest clients. I'd been working directly with Summit's CEO, Patricia Williams, on a comprehensive review of their subsidiary company's performance metrics. Fitzgerald Green Solutions had been specifically mentioned in our last meeting as one of their most promising recent acquisitions. The irony hit me like a physical weight. While my family was planning celebrations without me, I was potentially influencing business decisions that could affect my future brother-in-law's career. While they were treating me like an outsider, I was working at the highest levels of the industry that employed the man my sister was marrying. I sat back in my chair, processing this information. Patricia Williams was known for her hands-on approach to subsidiary management. She made it a point to know key personnel at each company Summit acquired, and she frequently asked for my input on personnel decisions and operational changes. If Marcus was doing well at Fitzgerald Green Solutions, there was a good chance his name had crossed my desk in reports and projections. I pulled up my files on the Summit Environmental Group account, searching through subsidiary performance, reports from the past quarter. There it was, buried in a spreadsheet of employee performance metrics. Marcus Fitzgerald, listed as a project manager with commendable sales figures and client satisfaction ratings. I'd literally reviewed his professional performance 2 weeks ago and recommended that Summit maintain their current staffing levels at Fitzgerald Green Solutions, citing strong individual contributions across their team. I'd helped protect my future brother-in-law's job, and I'd done it without even knowing he existed in my personal life. My phone buzzed again. More messages in the group chat I wasn't part of. Tyler was asking about decorations. Mom was coordinating with someone named Mrs. Fitzgerald, apparently Marcus's mother, about menu preferences. They were planning this celebration with the enthusiasm and attention to detail that I remembered from my own college graduation party, back when I was still included in family milestone celebrations. That thought led me down a path I'd been avoiding for months. When was the last time I'd been included in a family celebration that wasn't a major holiday? When was the last time anyone had asked for my input on something important happening? In our family? I couldn't remember, and that realization settled into my chest like a stone. I thought about calling Megan directly, congratulating her on the engagement, maybe casually mentioning that I'd love to attend any celebration they might be planning. But something stopped me. The group chat had been deliberate. They weren't planning around my schedule or making assumptions about my availability. They were planning without me, period. Instead, I opened my laptop and did what I always did when faced with a problem that needed solving. I gathered information. I researched Marcus Fitzgerald beyond his professional profile, looking into his background, his family, his education. What I found painted a picture of someone who seemed genuinely compatible with Megan's values and lifestyle. He'd studied environmental science at Colorado State University, had been involved in community volunteer work throughout college, and came from a family that owned a small but successful construction business in Portland. His parents, Robert and Linda Fitzgerald, appeared to be the kind of people who raised children with strong work ethics and community values. They'd been married for 38 years, had built their construction business from the ground up, and were actively involved in environmental conservation efforts in the Pacific Northwest. They seemed like the kind of people my parents would genuinely like, the kind of family that would blend well with ours, which made my exclusion from this celebration even more puzzling. If this was truly about family coming together to celebrate love and new beginnings, why wouldn't they want me there? I'd always gotten along well with Megan, despite our different career paths and life choices. We'd never had any major conflicts or falling outs. The only thing that had changed in recent years was my level of professional success. As that thought formed, an uncomfortable pattern began emerging in my mind. I started thinking about other, recent family events and my level of inclusion in them. Tyler's birthday party last year, I'd been invited, but felt distinctly like an outsider when conversation centered around local gossip and people I didn't know anymore. Thanksgiving, too. Years ago, when I'd tried to share news about landing a major client and felt the energy in the room shift to polite disinterest. Christmas gatherings where family members would ask about my work with the kind of forced enthusiasm usually reserved for discussing someone else's unusually long vacation slideshow. I'd been attributing these feelings to the natural distance that comes with living in different cities and having different lifestyles. Megan lived 20 minutes from our parents in Colorado Springs, worked in a helping profession that everyone understood and respected, and dated people who fit easily into family barbecues and casual weekend gatherings. I lived in Denver, traveled, frequently for work, and brought home stories about corporate strategies and market analyses that didn't translate well to dinner table conversation. But maybe it wasn't just distance. Maybe they'd been gradually writing me out of their story, the same way I'd been gradually writing myself into a professional narrative that took precedence over family connections. Maybe my success had created a barrier I hadn't noticed building, one that made them feel like I belonged to a different world entirely. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The thought should have made me sad, but instead it made me analytical. If this was truly about them feeling disconnected from my world, then perhaps the solution was to help them understand that my world and theirs weren't as separate as they seemed. If Marcus Fitzgerald was connected to my professional life, then maybe there was an opportunity to bridge these worlds in a way that benefited everyone. I spent the rest of the afternoon thinking about Patricia Williams and my upcoming meeting with Summit Environmental Group. We were scheduled to review subsidiary performance reports next week, and I knew she'd be particularly interested in hearing about companies that were exceeding expectations. Fitzgerald Green Solutions had been performing well above projections, and Marcus's individual contributions had been specifically noted in the reports I'd reviewed. Patricia was also known for her interest in employee satisfaction and retention, particularly in subsidiary companies where she wanted to maintain the entrepreneurial culture that had made them successful before acquisition. She often asked about team dynamics and individual employee engagement, especially in cases where maintaining key personnel was crucial to continued success. An idea began forming in my mind, one that was both professionally sound and personally satisfying. What if I recommended that Summit Environmental Group consider inviting high-performing employees from their subsidiaries to their annual company retreat? It was a legitimate business strategy that could improve employee retention and cross-company collaboration. It would also ensure that Marcus Fitzgerald's excellent performance was recognized at the highest levels of his company's corporate structure. And if that recognition happened to coincide with his engagement celebration, well, that would just be good timing. I opened a new document and began drafting a recommendation for Patricia Williams, outlining the benefits of recognizing exceptional subsidiary employees through inclusion in corporate-level events and initiatives. It was solid strategic thinking that would genuinely benefit Summit's business objectives, while also creating opportunities for employees like Marcus to build relationships with senior leadership. As I typed, I felt the familiar satisfaction that came with finding elegant solutions to complex problems. This wasn't about revenge or manipulation. It was about creating value for my client while potentially opening doors for my sister's fiancé. If my family didn't want to include me in their celebrations, I could at least make sure those celebrations had even more to celebrate. My phone buzzed again with another group chat message. This time, Mom was asking if anyone knew Marcus's parents' contact information because she wanted to coordinate with them about the party planning. Apparently, the Fitzgeralds were flying in from Portland for the engagement and wanted to contribute to the celebration. I stared at that message for a long moment, imagining the conversation that would eventually happen between my parents and Marcus's parents. They'd probably talk about their children, share stories about watching them grow up and find their paths in life. They'd likely mention their pride in their children's accomplishments and their excitement about the future they were building together. I wondered if my parents would mention me at all. Would they tell the Fitzgeralds about their other daughter, the one who lived in Denver and worked in consulting? Would they describe my career with pride or with the same polite distance I'd been sensing lately? Or would they simply focus on Tyler and Megan, the children who'd stayed closer to home and built lives that were easier to understand and celebrate? The uncertainty bothered me more than the exclusion itself. I could handle being left out of a party, but I couldn't handle not knowing whether my own parents were proud of what I'd built or whether they saw my success as something that had taken me away from them rather than something that reflected well on how they'd raised me. I closed my laptop and decided to head home early. Sometimes the best strategy is to step away from a problem and let your subconscious work on solutions while your conscious mind focuses on other things. I had a dinner meeting with another client that evening, and I needed to be fully present for that conversation rather than distracted by family dynamics I couldn't immediately fix. But as I gathered my things and prepared to leave the office, I couldn't shake the feeling that this situation with Megan's engagement was going to require more than just stepping away and hoping things resolved themselves. This felt like a moment that would define relationships going forward, and I wasn't sure I was prepared to accept being permanently relegated to the margins of my own family's story. Tomorrow, I would call Patricia Williams and schedule our subsidiary review meeting. I would present my recommendations for employee recognition and retention with the same professionalism and strategic thinking that had built my reputation. And I would see what opportunities emerged when worlds that seemed separate suddenly discovered their unexpected connections. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to change the context in which it exists. My family might not know how to include me in their celebrations, but perhaps they just needed to understand that the world I'd built wasn't as far from theirs as they'd assumed. The elevator doors closed behind me as I left the office, and I found myself looking forward to tomorrow's possibilities in a way I hadn't expected. Being excluded from the planning didn't mean I couldn't influence the outcome, and being underestimated by the people who should know me best didn't mean I couldn't surprise them with how much I actually understood about creating connections that mattered. After all, strategic consulting is ultimately about helping people see opportunities they didn't know existed. Maybe it was time to apply those skills to my own life. The next morning brought news that shifted everything. I was halfway through my usual coffee and financial reports routine when my phone rang with Patricia Williams' name on the screen. She never called this early unless something significant was happening. "Jessica, I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." Patricia's voice carried that particular urgency that meant business was about to get interesting. I need to move up our subsidiary review meeting. Something's come up with one of our renewable energy acquisitions, and I need your assessment as soon as possible. I set down my coffee, already mentally rearranging my day. Of course. What's the situation? Fitzgerald Green Solutions. We've got a potential partnership opportunity with a major commercial developer, but they're asking for expanded services beyond our current capacity. I need to know if this company has the personnel and infrastructure to handle rapid scaling, or if we're looking at a situation that could compromise their current performance standards. The coincidence felt surreal. When do you need the analysis? Today, if possible. I know it's short notice, but this could be worth tens of millions in annual revenue if we handle it correctly. The developer is already working with our competitor, and they're giving us 48 hours to present a better proposal. I glanced at my calendar, mentally calculating what I could postpone. I can have preliminary findings to you by this afternoon. Will you need a full operational assessment or just personnel capacity analysis? Both. And Jessica, I particularly want your take on their management team. The project would require someone who can interface directly with corporate executives while maintaining the hands-on approach that's made this subsidiary successful. From what I've seen in the reports, they might have that kind of talent, but I need your confirmation before I stake my reputation on it. After we ended the call, I sat staring at my phone for several minutes. The universe seemed to be forcing connections I wasn't sure I was ready to make. Marcus Fitzgerald wasn't just peripherally connected to my work anymore. He was potentially about to become central to one of the biggest deals my client was considering. I spent the next 3 hours deep in research mode, pulling every piece of data I could find on Fitzgerald Green Solutions operations, client relationships, and personnel performance. What I discovered painted a picture of a company that was operating significantly above industry standards across multiple metrics. Their client retention rate was 93%, compared to an industry average of 78%. Project completion times averaged 12% faster than quoted timelines, and their customer satisfaction scores consistently ranked in the top 5% of companies in their sector. More importantly, their growth had been steady and sustainable rather than the boom and bust pattern that characterized many renewable energy startups. But it was the personnel files that really caught my attention. Marcus Fitzgerald wasn't just performing well, he was exceptional. His project management scores were consistently perfect. His client feedback included phrases like innovative problem solving and exceeded every expectation. And his peer reviews highlighted leadership, qualities that suggested management potential. More than that, his educational background included a master's degree in sustainable business practices and a certification in corporate project management that I hadn't noticed in my initial research. This wasn't someone who'd stumbled into renewable energy as a career. This was someone who'd built expertise specifically designed for the kind of expansion Patricia was considering. I found myself reading through client testimonials that mentioned Marcus by name, praising his ability to explain complex technical concepts in terms that non-technical decision-makers could understand and act upon. One construction company executive had written, "Marcus Fitzgerald didn't just install our solar system. He educated our entire management team on long-term sustainability strategies that have influenced our approach to every subsequent building project." That kind of feedback indicated someone with exactly the skill set Patricia valued most in her subsidiary managers: technical expertise combined with executive communication abilities. It also indicated someone who was probably being significantly underutilized in his current role. As I compiled my analysis, a clearer picture began emerging. Fitzgerald Green Solutions had the infrastructure and personnel to handle significant expansion, but they would need additional management support to maintain their current quality standards while scaling operations. They had the talent to take on corporate-level projects, but they would need someone who could bridge the gap between their technical team and high-level business executives. They needed someone exactly like Marcus Fitzgerald in a senior management position. By early afternoon, I had a comprehensive report that painted Fitzgerald Green Solutions as not just capable of handling the proposed expansion, but as a company positioned to become a flagship subsidiary with the right strategic support. My recommendation was unequivocal. Summit Environmental Group should not only pursue the partnership opportunity, but should also consider elevating their most promising personnel to positions that would maximize both individual potential and company growth. I called Patricia to schedule an immediate meeting, knowing that what I was about to present would likely change the trajectory of several careers, including that of my sister's fiancé. Patricia's office occupied the entire corner of the 38th floor, with windows that offered panoramic views of downtown Denver and the mountains beyond. She was reviewing documents when I arrived, her gray hair pulled back in the efficient style that had become her signature during 20 years of executive leadership. "Jessica, please tell me you have good news," she said, gesturing for me to take a seat across from her massive oak desk. This developer partnership could position us as the dominant player in commercial renewable energy throughout the Mountain West, but only if we can deliver on promises that frankly might be beyond our current capacity. I opened my portfolio and placed the summary report in front of her. "You can make those promises with complete confidence. Fitzgerald Green Solutions isn't just ready for this expansion. They're positioned to exceed expectations in ways that could establish new industry standards." Patricia's eyebrows raised slightly as she scanned the executive summary. "These performance metrics are impressive, but metrics don't install solar panels or manage corporate relationships. Do they have the personnel to actually execute at this level? They have someone exceptional. Marcus Fitzgerald, their current project manager, has been operating at senior management level while technically functioning in a mid-level position. His educational background, performance record, and client feedback all indicate someone ready for significantly increased responsibility." I walked Patricia through the client testimonials, the project completion records, and the peer evaluations that painted Marcus as someone who was already performing many of the functions that a senior manager would handle in a larger organization. The more I presented, the more convinced I became that this recommendation wasn't just professionally sound, it was inevitable. "What are you suggesting?" Patricia asked, though her expression indicated she was already following my reasoning. "Promote Marcus Fitzgerald to Regional Operations Manager and task him with overseeing the corporate partnership expansion. He has the technical expertise to ensure quality standards and the communication skills to interface directly with executive-level clients. More importantly, he has the track record to prove he can deliver on ambitious promises." Patricia leaned back in her chair, processing the information. This kind of promotion would come with significant salary increases, expanded benefits, and likely relocation assistance if he needed to work more closely with our Denver operations. The investment would pay for itself within the first quarter, if the partnership develops according to projections. And based on his performance history, I'd be surprised if it doesn't exceed projections. What I didn't mention was that this promotion would transform Marcus from a successful but relatively unknown project manager into a rising star in the renewable energy industry. It would make him exactly the kind of professional accomplishment that families celebrate with pride and enthusiasm. It would make his engagement to my sister not just a personal milestone, but a moment when their entire extended family could feel proud of the match she was making. Patricia spent the next 20 minutes asking detailed questions about implementation, timelines, performance metrics, and risk mitigation strategies. Her questions were thorough and challenging, exactly what I expected from someone who'd built her reputation on making decisions that consistently generated positive outcomes for her company and her employees. "I want to meet him," she finally said. "If Marcus Fitzgerald is going to be the face of our most ambitious expansion effort, I need to assess his executive presence personally. Can you arrange a meeting for tomorrow morning?" I felt a moment of hesitation, knowing that arranging this meeting would formally introduce professional complications into my family situation. Once Marcus met with Patricia, regardless of the Outcome: he would inevitably learn about my role in bringing this opportunity to his attention. There would be no way to keep my involvement private, which meant there would be no way to avoid the conversation with my family about why I knew about his professional life while being excluded from his personal life. I'll contact Fitzgerald Green Solutions this afternoon and set up the meeting, I told Patricia. Should I prepare a formal briefing for him on the partnership opportunity, or do you prefer to present the details personally? Prepare a basic briefing, but I want to see how he handles information he hasn't had time to overanalyze. Some of our best insights come from initial reactions to new opportunities. After leaving Patricia's office, I sat in my car in the parking garage for several minutes, recognizing that I was about to cross a line that would fundamentally change my relationship with my family situation. Up until this point, I could have chosen to simply accept being excluded from Megan's engagement celebration and found ways to rebuild those relationships over time through traditional family channels. But once I made this phone call, once I initiated professional contact with Marcus Fitzgerald, I would be actively introducing my world into theirs in a way that couldn't be undone or ignored. They would have to acknowledge my professional capabilities because those capabilities would be directly impacting someone they cared about. They would have to recognize that the world I'd built wasn't separate from theirs. It was interconnected in ways they hadn't bothered to discover. I called Fitzgerald Green Solutions and asked to speak with Marcus Fitzgerald regarding a potential partnership opportunity with Summit Environmental Group. The receptionist put me through immediately, and within seconds I was talking to the man my sister was planning to marry. Marcus Fitzgerald speaking. How can I help you? His voice was warm and professional, with the kind of confidence that comes from someone who genuinely enjoys solving problems for other people. I could immediately understand why Megan had been attracted to him. There was an energy in his voice that suggested someone who approached life with optimism and competence. Mr. Fitzgerald, this is Jessica Chen from Strategic Solutions Consulting. I work with Summit Environmental Group on operational efficiency and expansion planning. We have a partnership opportunity that could significantly impact Fitzgerald Green Solutions, and my client would like to meet with you tomorrow morning to discuss the details. There was a brief pause, and I could almost hear him processing the potential significance of a call from Summit's consulting team. That sounds very interesting. Can you give me any preliminary information about the nature of the opportunity? I provided a basic overview of the commercial developer partnership, emphasizing the scale of the potential project and the timeline for decision-making. As I talked, I found myself genuinely impressed by his questions, which were both technically informed and strategically sound. He asked about implementation requirements, timeline flexibility, and quality assurance protocols, exactly the kinds of questions that indicated someone who understood both the opportunities and the challenges inherent in rapid business expansion. Ms. Chen, I have to say this opportunity sounds almost too good to be true. Partnership opportunities of this scale don't usually come to companies our size without significant competition or compromise. Can you help me understand why Summit Environmental Group is considering Fitzgerald Green Solutions for this project? The question was perceptive and exactly what I would have asked in his position. Your company's performance metrics over the past 18 months have been consistently exceptional across every measure that matters for this kind of expansion. My analysis indicates that you have both the infrastructure and the personnel to handle increased capacity while maintaining the quality standards that made you attractive for acquisition in the first place. Your analysis? His tone shifted slightly, becoming more focused. Have you been studying our operations specifically? Summit Environmental Group contracted me to conduct comprehensive performance reviews of their subsidiary companies. Fitzgerald Green Solutions was included in that review, and your individual contributions were specifically noted as exemplary. I could hear him processing this information, likely realizing that his professional performance had been under evaluation by corporate leadership without his knowledge. When you say my individual contributions were noted, what exactly does that mean? It means that Patricia Williams, CEO of Summit Environmental Group, is specifically interested in meeting with you tomorrow morning to discuss your potential role in spearheading this expansion effort. It means your work has been recognized at the highest levels of your corporate structure, and you're being considered for opportunities that could significantly advance your career. The silence that followed was longer this time, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a different quality. Excitement mixed with the kind of professional caution that comes from someone who's learned not to assume good news is too good to be true. Ms. Chen, I want to make sure I understand the situation correctly. You're calling to tell me that Summit's CEO wants to meet with me about a promotion opportunity related to a major partnership expansion, and this is happening because of performance. Reviews I didn't know were being conducted? That's an accurate summary, yes. And this meeting is tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock if you're available. Summit Environmental Group offices in downtown Denver. I'll be there. Should I prepare anything specific or bring particular documentation? I found myself smiling at his immediate acceptance and professional response. Just bring yourself and be prepared to discuss your vision for sustainable business practices in large-scale commercial applications. Ms. Williams values authentic insight over prepared presentations. After we ended the call, I sat in my car feeling a mixture of professional satisfaction and personal anticipation that was unlike anything I'd experienced in previous client situations. I'd just potentially changed the trajectory of someone's career. Someone whose life was about to become permanently intertwined with my family's life, whether my family wanted to acknowledge my role in that change or not. The next morning, I arrived at Summit Environmental Group's offices 30 minutes before Marcus's scheduled meeting, wanting to be present for Patricia's initial assessment, but also wanting to observe his professional presence for myself. I'd spoken with him on the phone and reviewed his performance metrics extensively, but I hadn't actually seen him in person since the photos on Megan's social media accounts. He arrived 15 minutes early, which immediately earned him points with Patricia's assistant, who valued punctuality above almost every other professional quality. I watched from across the lobby as he checked in, noting that he'd chosen a navy suit that was perfectly appropriate for a corporate meeting without being overly formal for someone coming from a more casual work environment. When Patricia's assistant called his name, I found myself standing up as well, ready to participate in what could be either a routine business meeting or a conversation that would reshape multiple aspects of my personal and professional life. Patricia's office looked different with Marcus in it, less like a corporate power center and more like a collaborative workspace where serious decisions were made by people who understood both the technical and human elements of complex business challenges. Marcus had positioned himself slightly forward in his chair, engaged and attentive without appearing overeager. Mr. Fitzgerald, thank you for making time on such short notice, Patricia began. Jessica has provided me with comprehensive analysis of your company's capabilities and your individual contributions. I'd like to hear your perspective on what sustainable business growth looks like in the renewable energy sector. What followed was a 40-minute conversation that exceeded every expectation I'd had based on Marcus's written performance reviews. He didn't just answer Patricia's questions, he engaged with them, building on her ideas and introducing concepts that demonstrated both technical expertise and strategic thinking that impressed even me. When Patricia asked about scaling challenges, Marcus talked about maintaining company culture during rapid expansion and the importance of preserving the entrepreneurial flexibility that had made Fitzgerald Green Solutions successful. When she asked about client relationship management, he described approaches that prioritized long-term partnerships over short-term profit maximization. Most importantly, when Patricia asked about his career goals, Marcus talked about wanting to help establish new industry standards for sustainable business practices that could influence how commercial development projects approached environmental responsibility. He wasn't just interested in career advancement. He was interested in using career advancement to create positive change in his industry. Patricia glanced at me several times during the conversation, and I could see her recognition. that my assessment had been not just accurate but conservative. Marcus Fitzgerald wasn't just ready for promotion. He was someone who could potentially help define Summit Environmental Group's future direction in renewable energy development. Mr. Fitzgerald, I'm prepared to offer you the position of Regional Operations Manager, effective immediately, with responsibility for overseeing our expansion into large-scale commercial partnerships. The position comes with a 40% salary increase, full executive benefits, and the autonomy to build your own team as the partnership develops. I watched Marcus's face process this information, seeing the moment when he realized that his professional life had just changed completely. His response was characteristically thoughtful and measured. Ms. Williams, I'm honored by this opportunity and excited about the potential to contribute to Summit's growth in this sector. I accept your offer, and I'm prepared to begin immediately. Patricia smiled, extending her hand across the desk. Excellent. Jessica will work with you on transition planning and provide strategic support as you develop your operational framework. I expect great things from this partnership. As Patricia and Marcus shook hands, I felt a moment of profound satisfaction that had nothing to do with professional accomplishment, and everything to do with having created an opportunity that would benefit someone who deserved recognition for exceptional work. But underneath that satisfaction was the growing awareness that I would now have to navigate the personal implications of having dramatically changed my future brother-in-law's life, while being excluded from celebrating his engagement to my sister. The meeting concluded with Patricia outlining immediate next steps and Marcus asking informed questions about reporting structures and operational priorities. As we prepared to leave her office, Patricia made a comment that brought the personal and professional elements of this situation into sharp focus. Mr. Fitzgerald, I hope you'll bring your fiancé to our annual executive reception next month. Summit Environmental Group values family connections, and I'd like to meet the woman who's marrying one of our rising stars. Marcus looked genuinely surprised and pleased. Thank you, Ms. Williams. Megan will be thrilled to hear about this opportunity, and I'm sure she'd love to attend the reception. As we walked toward the elevator, Marcus turned to me with an expression that combined professional gratitude with personal curiosity. Ms. Chen, I want to thank you for bringing this opportunity to my attention. My career just changed completely because of your analysis and recommendation. I found myself at a decision point that would determine how the next phase of this situation developed. I could maintain professional distance and let him discover the family connection on his own, or I could acknowledge it directly and deal with the implications immediately. You're welcome, Marcus, and congratulations on your engagement. I hope Megan appreciates what an exceptional partner she's found. The elevator doors opened as he processed my words, and I could see the exact moment when he realized that I somehow knew about his personal life in a way that went beyond professional research. His expression shifted from gratitude to confusion, to the beginning of understanding. Ms. Chen, how do you know Megan's name? I didn't mention her name during the meeting. The elevator doors closed behind us, and I found myself in a small, enclosed space with my sister's fiancé, about to have a conversation that would reshape how my family understood my place in their lives, whether they were ready for that conversation or not. The elevator seemed to move in slow motion as Marcus stared at me, processing the implications of my knowledge about his personal life. I could see multiple thoughts crossing his face. Confusion about how a strategic consultant would know his fiancé's name, concern about privacy boundaries, and growing curiosity about connections he hadn't anticipated. Megan is my sister, I said simply, deciding that straightforward honesty was the only approach that made sense in this moment. I found out about your engagement through a family group chat that I wasn't included in. I didn't seek out this professional connection deliberately, but once I discovered it, I chose to handle it in a way that would benefit your career. The elevator reached the ground floor, but neither of us moved toward the doors when they opened. Marcus looked at me with an expression that was equal parts surprise and calculation, clearly trying to understand the full scope of what had just happened. You're Megan's sister, Jessica? The one who lives in Denver and works in consulting? He paused, and I could see him connecting pieces of information. She's mentioned you, but she never said anything about you working with Summit Environmental Group or having any connection to renewable energy consulting. Because she doesn't know. My family doesn't really understand what I do professionally, and they don't ask for details. They know I work in consulting, but they don't know which companies I work with or what kind of impact my recommendations have on people's careers and lives. The elevator doors closed again, and Marcus pressed the button to hold them open while we continued our conversation. So, when you recommended me for promotion, you knew you were potentially changing the life of someone your sister cares about, but she doesn't know you had anything to do with it? That's correct. And more than that, she doesn't know that I know about your engagement at all, because I wasn't invited to any of the celebrations or planning discussions. I learned about it the same way I might learn about a stranger's engagement, through social media and accidental access to information I wasn't meant to see. Marcus stepped out of the elevator, and I followed him into the lobby, both of us clearly needing space to process this conversation properly. He found a seating area near the windows and gestured for me to join him, his expression thoughtful, rather than accusatory. Jessica, I need to understand something. When you made this recommendation to Patricia Williams, were you trying to help my career because you genuinely believed I deserved the opportunity? Or were you trying to create some kind of leverage in your family situation? The question was fair and demonstrated exactly the kind of thoughtful analysis that had impressed Patricia during their meeting. I appreciated that he was asking directly, rather than making assumptions about my motivations. Both, I answered, honestly. Your performance metrics and client feedback genuinely warranted this kind of recognition and advancement. Patricia needed someone with your exact skill set for this expansion, and you were the obvious choice based purely on professional qualifications. But I also recognized that helping you succeed professionally might create opportunities to address the way my family has been excluding me from important moments. Marcus nodded slowly, processing my explanation. So you're saying that even if there were no family connection, you would have recommended me for this position based on my work performance? Absolutely. In fact, if there had been no family connection, I probably would have recommended you even more enthusiastically, because I wouldn't have had to worry about personal complications affecting my professional judgment. He smiled slightly at that response. That's oddly reassuring. I was starting to wonder if this promotion was some kind of elaborate family intervention rather than a legitimate career opportunity. It's completely legitimate. Patricia Williams doesn't make hiring decisions based on family dynamics. She makes them based on business potential and proven performance. You earned this opportunity through your own work, not through any influence I might have with my family. Marcus was quiet for several minutes, looking out the lobby windows at downtown Denver traffic while apparently organizing his thoughts. When he spoke again, his voice carried a different quality, less professional politeness and more genuine curiosity about the family dynamics he was about to become part of. Jessica, can you help me understand why your family would exclude you from engagement celebrations? From everything Megan has told me about you, you're successful, accomplished, and supportive of your family. It doesn't make sense that they would deliberately leave you out of important events. The question hit deeper than I'd expected, partly because it forced me to articulate patterns I'd been avoiding examining too closely. I think they see my professional success as evidence that I've chosen a different kind of life, one that doesn't prioritize family relationships in the way they value. When I travel for work or miss family gatherings because of client commitments, they interpret that as me caring more about my career than about them. But surely they understand that career demands don't mean you care less about family relationships. I thought they did, but apparently not. Over the past few years, I've been included in fewer and fewer family discussions and celebrations. It started with small things, not being consulted about planning decisions, or not being included in group photos when I arrived late to events. But it's escalated to the point where they're now planning major family milestones without informing me at all. Marcus shook his head, looking genuinely confused. That seems like a significant misunderstanding of how professional responsibilities work. Most families would be proud of having a family member with your level of career success. Most families would be, yes. But I think my success makes them uncomfortable because it highlights differences in our choices and priorities that they'd rather not examine. It's easier to exclude me than to figure out how to bridge the gap between my world and theirs. And now I'm accidentally bridging that gap by being connected to both worlds simultaneously. I looked at him with appreciation for how quickly he'd grasped the full complexity of the situation. Exactly. You're about to become part of my family while also becoming part of my professional world in a way that makes it impossible for them to continue treating those worlds as completely separate. Marcus leaned back in his chair, clearly thinking through the implications of this convergence. Jessica, what do you want to happen next? How do you want to handle the fact that I now know about your role in my promotion, and that you know about my engagement to your sister? It was a strategic question that demonstrated why Patricia had been so impressed with his analytical thinking. He wasn't asking what I planned to do. He was asking what outcome I wanted to achieve and inviting me to think through the best approach for reaching that outcome. I want my family to understand that my professional success isn't something that separates me from them. It's something that can benefit them and the people they care about. I want them to recognize that excluding me from family celebrations means excluding someone who has resources and capabilities that could enhance those celebrations rather than diminish them. And how do you want to demonstrate that without creating conflict that could affect Megan's happiness during what should be a joyful time for her? The question showed genuine concern for his fiancé's well-being, which made me like him even more, and confirmed that Megan had chosen well, even if she'd chosen without understanding the full context of her family relationships. I think the best approach is to let your career advancement speak for itself. When your promotion becomes public, when you're attending executive events and working on high-profile projects, my family will naturally become curious about how these opportunities came about. That curiosity will create openings for conversations about my professional capabilities that wouldn't be possible if I tried to force those conversations directly. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. So you're suggesting a strategy where my professional success gradually demonstrates your professional competence, rather than you trying to claim credit for my advancement directly? Exactly. It's more sustainable and less likely to create defensiveness or conflict. Your success will be genuine and well-deserved, and my role in facilitating it will become apparent naturally over time. That's a remarkably sophisticated approach to family relationship management. You really do think strategically about everything, don't you? I laughed, recognizing the truth in his observation. It's probably a professional hazard. When you spend your days helping companies solve complex relationship and communication problems, you start applying the same analytical frameworks to personal situations. Marcus stood up, extending his hand for a handshake that felt like it was sealing some kind of agreement between us. Jessica, I want you to know that I'm grateful for what you've done for my career, and I'm also committed to making sure this situation ultimately benefits your relationship with your family rather than complicating it further. I appreciate that, Marcus, and I want you to know that I'm genuinely excited about welcoming you into our family, even if the circumstances of that welcome are more complicated than usual. As we walked toward the parking garage, Marcus asked one more question that demonstrated his understanding of the strategic complexity we were navigating. Should I mention to Megan that I've met you, or would you prefer to control the timing of that revelation yourself? I think it's better if you don't mention it yet. Let your promotion be announced officially. Let the family excitement about your career advancement build naturally. and then we can find the right moment to reveal the connections that made it possible. Over the next several days, I found myself in the unusual position of watching my family's social media accounts more closely than I'd ever watched client performance metrics. I was looking for signs that Marcus had shared news of his promotion, indications of how my family was responding to this unexpected development in his career. The first hint came through Tyler's Instagram story, which showed a screenshot of a text conversation with what appeared to be excited congratulations about huge career news. The next indication came through Megan's Facebook post, which announced that Marcus had received an incredible promotion opportunity that will change everything for our future together. But it was my mother's post that really caught my attention. She'd written a lengthy update about how proud she was of the wonderful man Megan has chosen to build her life with, and how success comes to those who work hard and deserve recognition. The post included phrases about family values and supporting each other through exciting opportunities that felt like indirect commentary on family members who prioritize career advancement. I found myself analyzing my mother's word choices with the same attention to detail I normally reserved for contract negotiations, looking for subtext and implications that might indicate how she was processing the news of Marcus's sudden career advancement. There was definitely pride in her post, but there was also something that felt like surprise, as if she hadn't expected someone in Megan's life to achieve this kind of professional recognition. More interesting was what wasn't in any of the posts. No curiosity about how this promotion had come about. No questions about the consulting process that had led to Marcus's advancement. No speculation about the strategic analysis that had identified him as promotion material. My family was celebrating the outcome without showing any interest in understanding the process that had created it. I realized that this pattern was consistent with how they'd always approached my professional life. They were happy to celebrate results when those results benefited people they cared about, but they weren't curious about the expertise and effort required to create those results. They wanted to enjoy the benefits of my strategic thinking without acknowledging the value of the strategic thinking itself. Patricia Williams called me 3 days after Marcus's meeting to provide updates on the partnership development and to share her impressions of Marcus's initial performance in his new role. Her feedback was exactly what I'd anticipated based on his track record, but hearing it confirmed felt satisfying in ways that went beyond professional validation. Jessica, I wanted to thank you again for identifying Marcus Fitzgerald for this position. He's exceeded every expectation I had, and he's already begun implementing operational improvements that should position us perfectly for the partnership expansion. I'm glad the transition is going smoothly. Has he had any challenges adjusting to the increased responsibility? Just the opposite. He's taken on the additional responsibilities as if he'd been preparing for them for years. His approach to team management and client relations demonstrates exactly the kind of leadership potential we need for this expansion phase. Patricia paused, and I could hear papers shuffling in the background as she apparently reviewed notes from recent meetings. Actually, there's something else I wanted to discuss with you. Marcus mentioned that he's getting married soon, and I'd like to do something special to recognize his promotion and celebrate his engagement simultaneously. What would you think about hosting a combined celebration event that acknowledges both his professional advancement and his personal milestone? The suggestion took me completely by surprise, though I probably should have anticipated that Patricia's attention to employee recognition would extend to major personal life events. She'd built her reputation partly on creating company culture that valued whole-person employee satisfaction rather than just professional performance. What kind of event are you considering? I asked, already beginning to see possibilities that could address multiple strategic objectives simultaneously. Something elegant but not overly formal. Perhaps a reception at the country club with an invitation list that includes his immediate family, his fiancé's family, and our senior management team. It would be an opportunity to welcome him officially into our executive circle while also celebrating his engagement in a way that demonstrates Summit's commitment to supporting our employees' personal happiness. I felt a moment of strategic clarity that was both personally satisfying and professionally sound. Patricia, I think that's an excellent idea. It would create an opportunity for family integration that could benefit both Marcus's comfort level in his new position and the company's relationship with employees' families. Exactly what I was thinking. Would you be willing to coordinate the planning? You understand both the professional objectives and the personal significance, which makes you the ideal person to ensure the event achieves both goals. After ending the call with Patricia, I sat in my office looking out at the Denver skyline and recognizing that the strategic landscape had shifted in ways that created opportunities I hadn't anticipated. Patricia's suggestion of a combined celebration event would force my family to attend a professional gathering where my role in Marcus's career advancement would be impossible to ignore or minimize. More than that, it would create a context where my professional capabilities would be demonstrated through event planning and execution, rather than through explanations or justifications that might sound like self-promotion. My family would see me operating in my professional environment, interacting with senior executives who clearly valued my expertise, and managing complex logistics with the same competence they'd been dismissing or overlooking. I spent the rest of the afternoon developing a preliminary event plan that would showcase both Marcus's professional achievements and the strategic thinking that had identified his potential. The guest list would include Patricia Williams and other Summit executives, Marcus's colleagues from Fitzgerald Green Solutions, and both families' immediate relatives. The venue would be upscale enough to reflect the significance of Marcus's promotion while remaining accessible and comfortable for family members who might feel intimidated by overly corporate environments. The program would include formal recognition of Marcus's achievements, acknowledgement of the partnership expansion he would be leading, and celebration of his engagement to Megan. Most importantly, the event would be professionally organized and executed in a way that demonstrated the kind of strategic planning and attention to detail that characterized my consulting work. My family would experience firsthand the level of competence and sophistication that my clients valued, rather than simply hearing about it secondhand through brief descriptions of work they didn't understand. As I refined the event concept, I realized that this celebration could accomplish something that direct confrontation or explanation never could. It could show my family exactly who I'd become professionally, while also demonstrating that my professional success was something that could enhance their lives rather than separate me from them. The next morning, I called Marcus to discuss Patricia's suggestion and to gauge his comfort level with the proposed celebration format. His response was immediately enthusiastic, which confirmed my assessment that he understood the professional and personal benefits of this kind of recognition event. Jessica, that sounds perfect. Megan will be thrilled to have our engagement celebrated in such an elegant setting, and I appreciate Summit's willingness to recognize personal milestones along with professional achievements. There's one aspect of this event that you should consider carefully, I said, wanting to ensure he understood the full implications of what Patricia was proposing. This celebration will necessarily involve my family attending a professional event where my role in your career advancement will be clearly visible. They'll see me operating in my professional environment, interacting with executives who value my expertise, and managing an event that reflects my capabilities. Marcus was quiet for a moment, clearly thinking through these implications. And you think that experience might help them understand your professional competence in a way that explanations or descriptions haven't been able to accomplish? I think it's possible. Sometimes people need to see capabilities demonstrated in context rather than hearing about them secondhand. Jessica, I want to make sure I understand your perspective on this. Are you hoping that this event will force a conversation with your family about why they've been excluding you from celebrations? Or are you hoping it will simply demonstrate your value in a way that makes future exclusions less likely? The question showed remarkable insight into the psychological dynamics at play. I'm hoping for the latter, I think forcing confrontations about past exclusions would be counterproductive and potentially damaging to relationships I want to repair rather than escalate. But I do hope that demonstrating my capabilities in a context where they can't be ignored or minimized will create foundation for healthier family dynamics going forward. That seems like a wise approach. And frankly, I think Megan and your parents will be impressed by this event regardless of any family dynamics considerations. Patricia Williams has a reputation for excellence in everything she does, so any event she hosts will reflect that standard of quality. After confirming Marcus's enthusiasm for the celebration concept, I began the detailed planning process that would transform Patricia's general idea into a specific event that could accomplish multiple strategic objectives simultaneously. The challenge was creating something elegant enough to reflect Summit Environmental Group's executive standards, while remaining warm and accessible enough to make family members comfortable. I spent the next several hours researching venues, catering options, and event logistics that would support the dual purpose of professional recognition and family celebration. The planning process felt familiar and satisfying, drawing on skills I'd developed through years of organizing corporate events and client celebrations. But it also felt different from my usual event planning, because this time I was designing an experience that would potentially reshape my most important personal relationships while also advancing my professional objectives. The stakes were higher and more complex than anything I'd managed before, but the strategic framework was fundamentally similar to other high-stakes projects I'd successfully executed. As I worked through venue options and timeline considerations, I found myself anticipating my family's reactions to different aspects of the event. Would my mother be impressed by the elegance of the setting, or would she feel intimidated by the corporate sophistication? Would Tyler and my father engage comfortably with Summit executives, or would they feel out of place in a professional networking environment? Most importantly, would Megan recognize the effort and expertise required to organize an event of this caliber? Or would she simply accept it as something that happened for her benefit, without considering the strategic planning that made it possible? These questions reminded me that successful event planning requires understanding your audience at least as well as you understand your objectives. I needed to design an experience that would demonstrate my professional capabilities while also ensuring that my family felt welcomed and celebrated rather than overshadowed or minimized. The challenge was complex, but it was exactly the kind of complex strategic problem that I'd built my career on solving. And for the first time in months, I felt confident that I had the tools and opportunities necessary to create outcomes that would benefit everyone involved rather than forcing anyone to choose between competing priorities or loyalties. The Pinnacle Country Club ballroom had been transformed into something that perfectly balanced corporate elegance with intimate celebration. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over round tables draped in navy linens. Each centerpiece a carefully arranged display of white roses and eucalyptus that managed to feel both sophisticated and welcoming. The space could accommodate 80 guests comfortably, which was exactly the number we'd settled on after careful consideration of both families, Summit's executive team, and key colleagues from Fitzgerald Green Solutions. I arrived 2 hours before the event to oversee final preparations, wearing a midnight blue dress that projected professional confidence without overshadowing the celebration's focus on Marcus and Megan. Every detail had been planned with the precision I brought to my most important client presentations. But tonight felt different because the stakes were entirely personal. Patricia Williams arrived 30 minutes early, immediately scanning the room with the practiced eye of someone who'd attended countless corporate events. Her approval was evident in her expression as she took in the lighting, the table arrangements, and the seamless integration of professional recognition displays with celebration elements. "Jessica, this is absolutely perfect," she said, examining the display board that featured photos of Marcus's projects alongside quotes from satisfied clients. "You've managed to create something that feels both distinguished and warm. This is exactly the kind of event that makes employees proud to be part of our organization." The registration table included programs that detailed Marcus's career progression, the significance of his promotion, and the partnership expansion he would be leading. But the programs also included personal touches, photos of Marcus and Megan together, quotes from family members about their relationship, and a timeline of their engagement story that positioned their love story within the context of professional achievement. As guests began arriving, I positioned myself near the entrance to facilitate introductions and ensure smooth transitions between professional networking and family celebration. The first to arrive were Marcus's parents, Robert and Linda Fitzgerald, who drove down from Fort Collins where they'd been visiting friends before the event. Robert Fitzgerald was exactly what I'd expected based on Marcus's professional demeanor: confident, warm, and genuinely interested in meeting everyone. Linda was elegant in a way that suggested someone comfortable in both casual and formal settings, wearing a sophisticated cocktail dress that coordinated perfectly with the evening's color scheme. "You must be Jessica," Linda said, extending her hand with a smile that immediately made me understand why Marcus was so skilled at client relations. Marcus has told us so much about the consultant who recognized his potential and helped create this incredible opportunity. The comment caught me slightly off guard because I hadn't expected Marcus to provide his parents with detailed information about my role in his promotion, but his decision to be transparent with them about professional connections demonstrated the kind of integrity that had made him successful in his career. "I'm delighted to meet you both," I replied. Marcus earned this promotion entirely through his own exceptional performance. I just helped ensure that his capabilities were recognized at the appropriate level. Robert nodded approvingly. "That's exactly what Marcus told us. He said you identified talent that was being underutilized and created opportunities for that. Talent to be properly applied. That's the mark of someone who understands both business strategy and human potential." As we talked, I found myself genuinely liking Marcus's parents and understanding why their son had developed such strong professional and personal values. They asked thoughtful questions about Summit Environmental Group's expansion plans, showed genuine interest in the renewable energy industry's growth potential, and expressed pride in Marcus's achievements without any of the awkwardness that sometimes accompanies rapid career advancement. 20 minutes later, my own family arrived in a group that included my parents, Tyler, and several extended family members I hadn't seen in months. Megan and Marcus entered together, Megan radiant in a flowing emerald dress that complemented Marcus's charcoal suit perfectly. She looked exactly like someone celebrating both professional achievement and personal happiness simultaneously. But it was my parents' expressions that captured my attention most immediately. They were looking around the ballroom with a mixture of appreciation and surprise, clearly not having anticipated this level of elegance and sophistication. My mother was wearing the pearl necklace she reserved for special occasions, and my father had chosen his best suit, but their body language suggested they weren't entirely sure what to expect from the evening. "Jessica?" My mother's voice carried genuine surprise as she approached me near the entrance. "I didn't realize you would be here tonight." Marcus mentioned that his company was hosting a celebration, but he didn't say you were involved. The moment had arrived sooner than I'd anticipated, but I was ready for it. I helped coordinate the event planning. Patricia Williams, Marcus's CEO, asked me to organize the celebration because I work with Summit Environmental Group on strategic consulting projects. My father's eyebrows raised slightly. "You work with Marcus's company. How did that happen?" Summit Environmental Group has been one of my clients for the past 8 months. I've been helping them with operational efficiency and expansion planning across their subsidiary companies, including Fitzgerald Green Solutions. Tyler stepped forward, looking confused. "Wait, so you knew about Marcus before he got engaged to Megan?" "I knew about his professional performance before I knew about his personal connection to our family. When I discovered the connection, I chose to handle the professional relationship in a way that would benefit his career advancement." Megan was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Jessica, are you saying you had something to do with Marcus's promotion?" Before I could answer, Patricia Williams approached our group. Having noticed the family resemblance, and correctly identified this as an introduction she wanted to facilitate personally. "You must be Megan," Patricia said, extending her hand warmly. "I'm Patricia Williams, CEO of Summit Environmental Group and Marcus's new boss. I wanted to personally thank you for sharing such an exceptional man with our organization." Megan smiled, clearly charmed by Patricia's attention. "Thank you so much for this beautiful celebration. Marcus is so excited about this opportunity." Patricia glanced at me, then back to Megan. "I hope you realize how fortunate Marcus is to have Jessica as part of his extended family. Her strategic analysis and recommendation were instrumental in identifying Marcus for this promotion. Without her insights into his capabilities and potential, we might have overlooked someone who's already proving to be one of our most valuable team members." The silence that followed Patricia's comment was profound. I could see my family processing this information, realizing that my professional expertise had directly benefited someone they cared deeply about, while simultaneously recognizing that they'd been excluding me from celebrations related to that same person. My mother was the first to speak. "Jessica recommended Marcus for promotion?" "Absolutely," Patricia replied. Jessica's performance analysis identified Marcus as someone with exceptional talent who was ready for significantly increased responsibility. Her recommendation was supported by comprehensive data on his client satisfaction, project management, and leadership potential. Marcus earned this promotion through his own excellent work, but Jessica ensured that excellence was recognized and rewarded appropriately. Tyler looked at me with an expression that combined respect with something that might have been embarrassment. "Jess, why didn't you tell us you were working with Marcus's company?" "Because until last week, you weren't including me in conversations about Marcus or Megan's engagement. I learned about their relationship the same way anyone outside the family would learn about it, through social media and accidental access to information I wasn't supposed to see." The honesty in my response created another moment of uncomfortable silence, but this time it was Patricia who filled the gap with exactly the kind of diplomatic intervention that made her successful in executive leadership. Family dynamics can be complex when professional and personal worlds intersect, she said smoothly. But what I've observed is that Jessica's professional capabilities are something your entire family should be proud of. Her strategic thinking and relationship management skills are exceptional, and they've created opportunities that benefit everyone involved. As if summoned by perfect timing, Marcus appeared at Megan's side, immediately sensing the tension in our conversation. "Is everything all right?" "Everything's wonderful," Patricia replied. "I was just explaining to Megan's family how Jessica's professional expertise helped create the opportunity for your promotion. I think they're beginning to understand the level of strategic thinking that went into recognizing your potential." Marcus looked at me with an expression of gratitude mixed with concern for how this revelation was affecting family dynamics. Jessica's analysis of my performance was incredibly thorough and insightful. She identified capabilities I didn't even realize I was demonstrating and positioned them in ways that made sense for corporate expansion objectives. Megan turned to face me directly, her expression now showing curiosity rather than confusion. "Jessica, I had no idea you worked at this level with major corporations. When you said you did consulting, I thought you meant small business advice or financial planning." The comment revealed exactly the kind of misunderstanding that had been contributing to our family's communication problems. They'd been minimizing my professional accomplishments because they didn't understand the scope or significance of what I actually did for work. "I work with Fortune 500 companies on strategic planning, operational efficiency, and expansion management," I explained. "My recommendations influence hiring decisions, budget allocations, and market positioning strategies that affect thousands of employees and millions of dollars in revenue." My father spoke for the first time since Patricia's introduction. "Jessica, I think we owe you an apology. We've been treating your career like it was just a job that kept you busy. when clearly you've built something much more significant than we realized. Before I could respond, the evening's program began with Patricia calling for everyone's attention. The formal portion of the celebration included recognition of Marcus's achievements, presentation of his new business cards and executive parking pass, and acknowledgement of the partnership expansion he would be leading. But the most meaningful moment came when Patricia asked me to stand and be recognized for my role in identifying and developing talent within Summit's organization. The applause from both families and colleagues created a moment of professional validation that felt more satisfying than any client appreciation I'd ever received. During dinner, I found myself seated between my mother and Linda Fitzgerald, which created opportunities for conversations that bridged professional accomplishment with family celebration in ways I hadn't anticipated. Linda asked thoughtful questions about my consulting work, while my mother listened with what appeared to be genuine interest rather than polite tolerance. "Jessica, I'm curious about how you identified Marcus's potential for advancement," Linda said. "What specific qualities did you see in his performance that indicated readiness for executive responsibility?" The question gave me an opportunity to explain my analytical process while also highlighting Marcus's exceptional capabilities. As I described the metrics I'd reviewed and the strategic thinking behind my recommendation, I could see my mother beginning to understand the complexity and sophistication of the work I did professionally. "So, when you analyze someone's performance, you're looking at multiple data sources and trying to predict their success in roles they haven't performed yet?" my mother asked. "Exactly. It requires understanding both current capabilities and growth potential, then matching those factors with organizational needs and strategic objectives." In Marcus's case, all the indicators suggested someone ready for significantly increased responsibility. Tyler, who was seated across from us, leaned into the conversation. "Jess, I have to ask, how many people's careers have you influenced through recommendations like this?" "Over the past 5 years, probably several hundred people have been promoted, hired, or had their roles expanded based on my analysis and recommendations. Most of them never know I was involved in the decision-making process." The realization that I'd been influencing career outcomes for hundreds of people while my own family remained unaware of my professional impact seemed to settle over the table like a revelation. They were beginning to understand that my work had real consequences for real people's lives, not just abstract business outcomes. As the evening progressed, I watched my family interact with Summit's executive team and Marcus's colleagues, seeing them recognize the level of respect and appreciation my professional work had earned in corporate environments. Patricia made a point of introducing my parents to other executives, consistently mentioning my strategic contributions to Summit's success. The transformation in my family's understanding became most apparent during the toasting portion of the evening. When Marcus stood to thank everyone for attending, he specifically acknowledged my role in creating opportunities for professional advancement, while also expressing gratitude for my support of his relationship with Megan. "I want to thank Jessica Chen for seeing potential in my work that I hadn't fully recognized myself, and for helping create opportunities that have changed both my career trajectory and my ability to build the kind of future Megan and I envision together." When Megan stood to respond, her words addressed both the professional recognition and the family dynamics that had been underlying our interactions. "Jessica, I owe you an apology. We've been so focused on our own celebrations that we failed to recognize how your professional success could enhance those celebrations rather than compete with them. Thank you for helping Marcus achieve something that makes our future brighter, and thank you for doing it even when we weren't including you in our planning." The acknowledgement created space for my father to stand and address the room, something he rarely did at family gatherings but seemed moved to do tonight. "I want to say something about my daughter Jessica. We've been proud of her success, but we didn't fully understand what that success meant in practical terms for other people's lives. Tonight we've learned that her professional expertise has directly benefited someone our family loves, and we've seen the respect she's earned from leaders in her industry. We should have been celebrating her accomplishments all along, not just tonight. After the formal program concluded, the celebration continued with dancing and informal networking that gave both families opportunities to build relationships around shared pride in Marcus and Megan's future together. But for me, the most satisfying conversations happened with family members who were seeing my professional capabilities demonstrated in context rather than just described in abstract terms. My mother approached me during a quiet moment near the dessert table, her expression thoughtful and somewhat apologetic. "Jessica, I want to understand something. When we were planning Megan's engagement party, we assumed you wouldn't be interested because you're always so busy with work. But tonight, I'm realizing that your work involves exactly the kind of strategic thinking that could have made our planning more effective and meaningful." The observation showed exactly the kind of recognition I'd been hoping to achieve through demonstration, rather than explanation. "Mom, I've always wanted to contribute to family celebrations, not avoid them. My professional skills include event planning, logistics coordination, and relationship management, all capabilities that could enhance family gatherings rather than detract from them. We've been thinking about your career as something that takes you away from family, when we should have been thinking about it as something that could bring additional resources and capabilities to family activities." Tyler joined our conversation, overhearing the last exchange. "Jess, I have a confession. We didn't invite you to engagement party planning because we thought you'd try to take over and make it more complicated than it needed to be. But after seeing what you organized for tonight, I realize we probably could have used your help making our celebration more special." The admission was both painful and validating, confirming that family exclusion had been deliberate while also acknowledging that the exclusion had been based on misunderstandings about my motivations and capabilities. As the evening concluded, Patricia Williams pulled me aside for a private conversation that felt like professional recognition combined with personal mentorship. "Jessica, watching your family realize the scope of your professional impact tonight was fascinating. You handled a complex situation with remarkable grace and strategic thinking. This event accomplished multiple objectives simultaneously, recognizing Marcus's achievements, celebrating his engagement, demonstrating your capabilities to your family, and strengthening Summit's relationships with employee families. Thank you, Patricia. It was important to me that the celebration genuinely honored Marcus and Megan, while also creating opportunities for better family understanding. You succeeded completely, and I want you to know that events like this reinforce my confidence in your strategic judgment. You understand how to create outcomes that benefit everyone involved, rather than forcing people to choose between competing interests. The drive home gave me time to process the evening's outcomes and recognize that the strategic approach I'd chosen had accomplished more than I'd anticipated. My family wasn't just acknowledging my professional capabilities, they were beginning to understand how those capabilities could enhance rather than compete with family relationships. More importantly, they were recognizing that excluding me from family celebrations meant excluding someone who could contribute valuable resources and perspectives to making those celebrations more meaningful and successful. 3 days later, I received a call from Megan that confirmed the evening had created lasting changes in family dynamics rather than just temporary recognition. "Jessica, I wanted to talk to you about something. Tyler and I have been discussing the fact that we're planning a wedding, and we realize we'd be crazy not to ask for your help with coordination and logistics. Would you be interested in being involved in wedding planning? Not just as my sister, but as someone with professional event management expertise?" The invitation represented exactly the kind of integration between professional capabilities and family relationships that I'd been hoping to achieve. "I would love to help with wedding planning. I think we could create something really special by combining your vision for the celebration with strategic planning and resource management." That's exactly what we were thinking. And Jessica, I want you to know that after seeing how you handled Marcus's promotion and the celebration event, I feel confident that having you involved in wedding planning will make everything better rather than more complicated. 6 months later, I stood in the bridal suite of the resort where Megan and Marcus were getting married. helping my sister with final preparations for a wedding that had exceeded every expectation for elegance, organization, and meaningful celebration. The event had been planned with the same strategic attention to detail I brought to corporate projects, but it reflected Megan's personal style and Marcus's family traditions in ways that made it uniquely theirs. Patricia Williams attended the wedding as Marcus's boss and had been seated at the family table, where she spent the evening talking with my parents about their pride in both their daughters' accomplishments. The conversation had evolved naturally from professional recognition to family appreciation in ways that felt sustainable and genuine. During the reception, my father stood to make a toast that addressed both the celebration of Megan and Marcus's marriage and the broader changes in our family dynamics that had emerged from professional connections becoming personal relationships. Tonight, we're celebrating the marriage of two exceptional people who found each other and built something beautiful together. But we're also celebrating the reminder that family relationships are strongest when we recognize and appreciate each other's capabilities rather than making assumptions about each other's priorities. Jessica, thank you for showing us that professional success and family commitment aren't competing values. They're complementary strengths that can enhance each other when we're wise enough to integrate them properly. As I watched Megan and Marcus dance their first dance as a married couple, I reflected on how strategic thinking applied to personal relationships had created outcomes that benefited everyone involved. My family hadn't just learned to appreciate my professional capabilities, they'd learned to see those capabilities as resources that could strengthen family bonds rather than threaten them. The exclusion from engagement party planning had been painful, but it had also created opportunities to demonstrate value in ways that explanations never could have accomplished. Sometimes the most effective strategy for changing relationship dynamics is to focus on creating positive outcomes rather than addressing past misunderstandings directly. Marcus caught my eye from the dance floor and smiled, a gesture that acknowledged our shared understanding of how professional connections had evolved into family integration that benefited everyone involved. Megan looked radiant and happy, surrounded by family members who had learned to celebrate each other's successes rather than feeling threatened by different kinds of achievement. As the evening concluded, I realized that being excluded from one family celebration had led to creating multiple celebrations that were more meaningful and successful than anything we could have achieved without professional expertise integrated with family love. The strategic approach had worked not because it forced recognition, but because it demonstrated value in ways that made recognition inevitable and genuine. Sometimes the best way to solve a family problem is to stop trying, to fix the family and start focusing on creating opportunities for the family to discover solutions that work better for everyone involved. Professional capabilities aren't separate from personal relationships. They're tools that can strengthen those relationships when applied with wisdom, patience, and genuine care for outcomes that benefit everyone. 2 years after that transformative celebration at the Pinnacle Country Club, I found myself standing in my childhood bedroom in Colorado Springs, helping Megan pack the last of her belongings from our parents' house. She and Marcus had decided to move to Portland, where Marcus would be opening Summit Environmental Group's new Pacific Northwest regional office, another promotion that had come through the success of the partnership expansion I'd originally recommended. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was now the family member my parents called when they needed help with major life transitions. When Dad had his minor heart episode 6 months earlier, I was the one who coordinated with his medical team, arranged for temporary household assistance, and managed communication with insurance providers. When Mom decided to downsize their house and move to a retirement community, I was the one who helped evaluate options, negotiate contracts, and coordinate the logistics of selling a home they'd lived in for 35 years. Jess, I still can't believe how much has changed since that night at Marcus's promotion celebration, Megan said, carefully wrapping picture frames in tissue paper. It's like our whole family dynamic shifted because we finally understood what you actually do for work. I laughed, folding sweaters into a moving box with the systematic efficiency I brought to everything. It wasn't just about understanding my work. It was about recognizing that professional success and family relationships don't have to be separate categories. When you see someone's career as an extension of their values and capabilities, rather than as competition for their time and attention, it changes how you include them in family decisions. Megan paused in her packing to look at me directly. I need to ask you something I've been thinking about for months. When you recommended Marcus for that promotion, were you angry with us for excluding you from engagement planning? Were you trying to prove a point? Or were you genuinely just trying to help his career? The question was one I'd been expecting for over a year, and I appreciated that Megan was finally comfortable enough to ask it directly. Both, honestly. I was hurt by being excluded, but I would have recommended Marcus for promotion based purely on his professional qualifications, even if there had been no family connection. The personal motivation was about creating opportunities to demonstrate my value to the family, not about manipulating outcomes or forcing recognition. That distinction makes sense to me now, but it wouldn't have 2 years ago. I think I was so worried about you overshadowing my accomplishments that I didn't recognize how your accomplishments could actually enhance mine. I set down the box I was packing and sat on her bed, wanting to have this conversation with full attention rather than as background to moving logistics. Megan, can I tell you something I learned through all of this? When families compete instead of collaborate, everyone loses opportunities they don't even know they're missing. Your engagement celebration could have been more elegant, more memorable, more meaningful if you'd had access to my event planning resources. Marcus's career advancement could have happened sooner if you'd known about my professional connections in his industry. We all could have benefited from better communication and resource sharing. Megan sat down beside me, her expression thoughtful. You're right, and I think that's why Mom and Dad have been asking for your input on everything lately. They're realizing that having a family member with professional expertise in strategic planning is actually an asset rather than a threat to family autonomy. Over the past 2 years, our family relationships had indeed transformed in ways that went far beyond simple appreciation for my professional capabilities. I'd helped Tyler evaluate job offers when he was considering leaving his teaching position, using salary negotiation strategies and benefits analysis that resulted in a 30% increase in his compensation package. I'd assisted my parents with retirement planning, investment portfolio optimization, and healthcare decision-making that had improved both their financial security and their quality of life. More importantly, they'd started including me in family planning from the beginning, rather than asking for help only when situations became complicated. When my cousin Ashley decided to get married, I was consulted about venue selection, budget, management, and vendor coordination from the initial planning stages. When Uncle Mike's construction business needed strategic guidance for expansion, the family automatically suggested he contact me for professional consultation. The shift hadn't happened overnight, and it hadn't been without some awkward moments. As we all learned to navigate the integration of professional expertise with family relationships, there had been conversations about boundaries, discussions about when to apply business strategies to personal situations, and negotiations about balancing professional objectivity with family loyalty. But the overall result had been family relationships that were stronger, more collaborative, and more effective at achieving shared goals. We'd learned to see individual strengths as family resources rather than as evidence of different priorities or values. Marcus appeared in the doorway, carrying a box of books and wearing the kind of satisfied expression that comes from successfully dismantling complex furniture. Ladies, I hate to interrupt what looks like an important conversation, but I wanted to update you on timeline. The moving truck will be here in 2 hours, and we're ahead of schedule on packing. How's the new office setup progressing? I asked, knowing that Marcus had been working intensively on launching Summit's Portland operations, while also managing the transition of his current projects to other team members. Better than anticipated, actually. Patricia approved additional staffing budget and we've already identified 3 potential hires who could start within the first month. The market analysis you helped me prepare convinced corporate that Portland represents even more growth potential than our original projections indicated. The Portland expansion had become another example of how professional connections within our family had created opportunities that benefited multiple people simultaneously. When Marcus needed market research and competitive analysis for his expansion proposal, I'd been able to provide consulting services that helped ensure his proposal was comprehensive and compelling. When Summit needed local business development support, I'd connected them with colleagues in my professional network who specialized in Pacific Northwest markets. The collaboration had been so successful that Patricia Williams had offered me a formal consulting contract to provide ongoing strategic support for Summit's expansion into new regional markets. The contract represented both professional growth for me and continued opportunities to support Marcus's career development in ways that felt natural rather than forced. "Jess, there's something else I wanted to discuss with you," Marcus said, setting down his box and adopting the slightly formal tone he used when introducing important topics. "Patricia has been talking about the possibility of creating a new position focused on intercompany strategic partnerships. Basically someone who would identify collaboration opportunities between Summit and other corporations that could benefit both organizations." Ma. I felt my interest immediately engage, recognizing the kind of role that would perfectly combine my strategic thinking skills with relationship management capabilities. That sounds like exactly the kind of position that could have significant impact across multiple industries. She wants to offer it to you. The position would be based in Denver, but would involve travel to all of Summit's regional offices, including the new Portland location. It would essentially make you part of Summit's executive team while maintaining your independence as a strategic consultant. The offer was both professionally exciting and personally satisfying, representing recognition of my capabilities by people who had observed my work closely enough to understand its full value. But it also represented a level of integration between my professional life and my family's life that would have seemed impossible before Marcus's initial promotion. "Marcus, that's an incredible opportunity. How do you feel about potentially working for the same company as your sister-in-law? Are you comfortable with that level of professional overlap?" Marcus smiled, the expression carrying genuine warmth rather than diplomatic politeness. "Jessica, working with you on various projects over the past 2 years has been one of the most positive professional experiences I've had. You understand how to maintain appropriate boundaries while also creating collaborative opportunities that benefit everyone involved. I think having you as part of Summit's strategic team would be fantastic for the company and for anyone working with you." Megan looked back and forth between Marcus and me, her expression showing excitement rather than concern about potential complications. "This is exactly what I was talking about earlier. 2 years ago, I would have been worried about you and Marcus working together because I would have seen it as you invading my personal life. Now I'm excited about it because I understand that your professional success creates opportunities that benefit all of us." The conversation was interrupted by my mother calling from downstairs, asking for help with something related to the moving logistics. As we headed down to see what she needed, I found myself reflecting on how dramatically my role in family decision-making had evolved since that initial exclusion from engagement party planning. Mom was in the kitchen, standing amid a collection of boxes and looking slightly overwhelmed by the complexity of coordinating a move that involved multiple family members, professional movers, and various scheduling constraints. "Jessica, I'm hoping you can help me figure out the most efficient way to coordinate everything that needs to happen this afternoon. The movers are coming at 2, but we also need to handle the final walkthrough with the realtor, coordinate with the cleaning service, and make sure Marcus and Megan's mail forwarding is properly set up." The request was exactly the kind of logistical coordination I handled routinely in my professional work, but having my mother ask for this type of assistance represented a level of trust and recognition that felt deeply meaningful. I spent the next 20 minutes creating a timeline that coordinated all the necessary activities, assigned specific responsibilities to different family members, and built in buffer time for unexpected complications. The planning process felt familiar and satisfying, but it also felt different because I was applying professional skills to support people I loved, rather than to solve problems for corporate clients. "Mom, can I ask you something?" I said as we finalized the coordination plan. "When you ask for my help with things like this, are you thinking of it as getting professional consulting services, or are you thinking of it as asking your daughter for assistance with family logistics?" She considered the question carefully before responding. "Both, I think. I'm asking my daughter for help, but I'm also recognizing that my daughter has professional capabilities that make her particularly good at solving complex coordination problems. It's not that I see you as a consultant first and a family member second. It's that I've learned to appreciate how your professional strengths can enhance your contributions to family situations." The distinction was important because it indicated that our family had learned to integrate professional capabilities with personal relationships, rather than seeing them as competing categories. I wasn't being valued only for what I could do professionally, but my professional capabilities were being appreciated as part of who I was as a family member. Tyler appeared in the kitchen carrying a box of kitchen items, looking slightly frustrated, with something related to the packing process. "Jess, can you help me figure out the most efficient way to pack these dishes? I feel like I'm wasting space and using too much packing material, but I'm not sure how to optimize the process." The request was minor in terms of overall moving logistics, but it represented another example of family members recognizing that I approached problem solving with systematic thinking that could be applied to various situations. Tyler wasn't asking me to take over dish packing. He was asking me to share knowledge that would help him do it more effectively. As I showed Tyler some packing optimization techniques I'd learned through years of coordinating office relocations for corporate clients, I realized that these kinds of knowledge-sharing interactions had become routine parts of our family relationships. Family members regularly asked for my input on decision-making processes, resource allocation strategies, and coordination challenges. Not because they couldn't handle these situations themselves, but because they'd learned that collaborative problem-solving often produced better outcomes than individual effort. The moving process continued smoothly through the afternoon, with various family members contributing different capabilities and resources to ensure everything was completed efficiently and without major complications. Dad coordinated with the moving company, Mom handled communication with service providers, Tyler managed physical logistics, Marcus focused on work-related transition issues, and I provided strategic oversight and problem-solving support when coordination challenges arose. But the most meaningful aspect of the day wasn't the successful completion of moving logistics. It was the demonstration of how our family had learned to function as a collaborative unit that leveraged individual strengths rather than minimizing them. Everyone's contributions were recognized and appreciated, and everyone's capabilities were seen as resources that enhanced collective effectiveness. As the moving truck pulled away from our parents' house that evening, loaded with Marcus and Megan's belongings for their new life in Portland, our entire family gathered on the front porch for what had become an informal tradition whenever someone was making a major life transition. "I want to say something before you two officially begin your Portland adventure," Dad said, adopting the slightly formal tone he used for important family conversations. "This move represents professional advancement for Marcus, exciting new opportunities for Megan, and continued family connections despite geographical distance. But it also represents something else, evidence of how family relationships can support individual success rather than competing with it." He paused, looking at each of us before continuing. "Jessica, 2 years ago we didn't understand how your professional success could enhance family relationships. We saw your career as something that took you away from us rather than something that could bring additional resources and opportunities to our family. We were wrong, and I'm grateful that you were patient enough to help us learn better approaches to supporting each other's achievements." Tyler nodded, adding his own perspective. "What I've learned is that having family members with different kinds of expertise and experience makes all of us more capable of handling life's challenges and opportunities. Jess, your strategic thinking and professional connections have helped all of us make better decisions about everything from career moves to retirement planning to event coordination." Megan stepped forward, her expression showing the kind of emotional honesty that had characterized our family conversations since learning to communicate more openly about professional and personal integration. "I want to apologize again for excluding you from engagement party planning, but I also want to thank you for handling that exclusion in a way that ultimately strengthened our family, rather than creating permanent damage. You could have chosen to be angry or to force confrontations that would have been destructive. Instead, you chose to demonstrate your value in ways that helped us recognize what we were missing." Marcus, who had been quietly listening to these family reflections, spoke up with his characteristic thoughtfulness. "As someone who married into this family during the transition period, I've had the unique perspective of watching these relationship changes develop in real time. What I've observed is a family learning to celebrate individual achievements as collective resources rather than seeing them as evidence of different priorities or values." As we said our goodbyes and prepared for Marcus and Megan's departure to Portland, I found myself feeling a sense of completion that went beyond the successful coordination of moving logistics. Our family had not only resolved the communication problems that had led to my exclusion from engagement planning, we'd developed better approaches to supporting each other's success that would serve us well through future challenges and opportunities. The drive back to Denver gave me time to process the day's events and to consider Patricia Williams's job offer in the context of how my professional and personal relationships had evolved. The position would represent career advancement and expanded opportunities to apply strategic thinking to complex business challenges, but it would also represent continued integration of professional success with family relationships in ways that enhanced both. 3 days later, I called Patricia to accept the position of Director of Strategic Partnerships, with the understanding that the role would allow me to maintain consulting relationships with other clients, while also providing ongoing strategic support for Summit's expansion and collaboration initiatives. The conversation about position responsibilities and reporting structures felt different from other job-related discussions I'd had throughout my career, partly because this opportunity had emerged from demonstrated performance in situations that combined professional expertise with personal relationship management. "Jessica, I want you to know that this position was created specifically because of the unique combination of strategic thinking and relationship management capabilities you've demonstrated over the past 2 years," Patricia said. "Your ability to identify collaboration opportunities that benefit multiple stakeholders simultaneously is exactly what we need for successful expansion into new markets and partnership development." 6 months into the new position, I was traveling to Portland for a quarterly review meeting with Marcus's regional team, combining business objectives with personal opportunities to spend time with Megan in her new city. The integration of professional travel with family visits had become routine, representing practical benefits of having career responsibilities that aligned with personal relationship priorities. The Portland office that Marcus had established was exceeding performance projections across multiple metrics, and the partnership development strategies I'd recommended were generating collaborative opportunities with local businesses that benefited both Summit and the broader renewable energy industry in the Pacific Northwest. During my visit, Megan and I spent an evening walking through Portland's Pearl District, talking about how our individual life choices had evolved in ways that supported, rather than competed with, family relationships. "Jess, I have to tell you, something that I've been thinking about for months," Megan said as we stopped for coffee at a small cafe near her apartment. "Watching you handle family exclusion by focusing on creating positive outcomes rather than demanding recognition taught me something important about how to approach relationship challenges in my own marriage and friendships." I was curious about her perspective, recognizing that family relationship changes had affected everyone's approach to personal interaction management. What did you learn? I learned that when people aren't appreciating your contributions or recognizing your value, sometimes the most effective response is to focus on demonstrating that value in ways they can't ignore, rather than trying to convince them through arguments or explanations. You showed us who you were professionally by helping Marcus succeed, and that demonstration was more powerful than any conversation about your capabilities could have been. The observation was perceptive and indicated that the strategic approach I'd chosen had implications beyond just resolving my own family relationship challenges. Megan, that's exactly right. People are much more likely to recognize and appreciate capabilities when they see them producing positive results than when they hear about them through descriptions or justifications. As our Portland evening concluded and I prepared to return to Denver the next morning, I reflected on how completely my professional and personal life had integrated in ways that enhanced both, rather than forcing choices between competing priorities. My career had expanded to include opportunities that regularly brought me into contact with family members, while family relationships had evolved to include appreciation for professional capabilities that benefited collective decision-making and resource management. The exclusion from engagement party planning that had initially felt like rejection and dismissal had ultimately created opportunities to demonstrate value in ways that strengthened family relationships and expanded professional opportunities simultaneously. The strategic approach of focusing on positive outcomes rather than past grievances had produced results that exceeded anything I could have achieved through confrontation or demand for recognition. Most importantly, our family had learned that individual success and collective relationships are not competing categories. They are complementary elements that can enhance each other when approached with wisdom, patience, and genuine commitment to outcomes that benefit everyone involved. Standing in the Portland airport the next morning, boarding a flight back to Denver where I would continue building strategic partnerships that created opportunities for businesses and individuals across multiple industries, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction with how professional capabilities and personal relationships had become integrated aspects of a life that felt both successful and meaningful. The engagement party exclusion had ended, but the lessons about family collaboration, professional integration, and strategic relationship management would continue to influence how I approached both career opportunities and personal connections for years to come. Sometimes the most painful family experiences create opportunities to build stronger relationships than existed before the conflict, but only when people are willing to focus on creating positive outcomes rather than demanding acknowledgement of past mistakes. Professional success and family relationships don't have to compete. They can enhance each other when approached with strategic thinking and genuine care for everyone's well-being. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.